Another preseason monitor. This time, I'll be talking about Tyrique George. Exciting young winger which Everton signed this summer on a permanent deal from Chelsea. When the initial rumors came about that Everton were not going to trigger the option to buy, I was completely pessimistic. I thought we have no chance to get Tyrique George for a better deal than what was negotiated during the initial loan spell. So I was very pleasantly surprised that Everton got this deal done. So absolutely, I'm a very big fan of this signing. I think Everton did an extremely good deal. Yeah? Of course, we signed someone based on potential, not based on evidence, but I think the potential with Tyrique George is immense. I think he has pretty much the same potential that Tyler Dibling has, and we got him for a better deal. And we already saw him in an Everton shirt, and we saw that he can definitely be a great asset for this Everton team going forward. And it's also very pleasant to see that Tyrique seems to like Everton a lot. He seems to be very, very happy, which I wouldn't have necessarily thought. I mean, if we look at his numbers from last season, he didn't have that many minutes for Everton either. You could argue his season prior to the one from last season was actually a better season. So you could say his career has stagnated last season. And I'm sure he would have looked at the Everton move as a potential progressive move for his career. Still, for whatever reason, he seems to love Everton. He seems to be happy to be here and looks at us as a place where his career can really take off now. And that is obviously what we all hope. After Tyler Dibling, who I talked about last week, this one is about Tyrique George. And it makes sense because he is more or less his counterpart, right? He's another winger on the left side. Clearly, from what we've seen so far, we are all pretty sure that Tyrique George's role in an Everton shirt will be as a left winger, where he'll be competing with currently Iliman Ndiaye. He is another super exciting young player. And now let me talk about the profile. What do I think? What type of player is Tyrique George? Because I personally do not look at players just in terms of their position or in terms of their numbers. I'm more interested when I start thinking about a player. What I'm looking at, I want to find out what profile does he have, right? Currently a buzzword, but what do I mean by that? What type of problems does this player help us solve? What are his main attributes? What does he bring to our attacks? What part of the left side, where does he start his moves? What does he contribute to this Everton team? And I think, if we look at all of our wingers, yes, on paper they all play as wingers, but they all have quite a distinct profile, right? I mean, Tyrique George and even Dibling, who I would say have many similarities, even those two have different strength or have different profiles, right? Not simply because one is playing on the right and one is playing on the left. As I said last time, I think Dibling, and let's also compare their two heat maps here. Dibling is someone, in my view, that starts his initial moves from a deeper position. And I think he's someone that has a strong preference to cut inside, not just near the edge of the box, but someone that starts from deeper positions, likes to drift also inside, and has a good playmaking ability. He's able to play through balls. So for someone like Beto, I think could benefit immensely from a Tyler Dibling in very good form. But then Tyrique George, on the other hand, is someone I think is a more advanced winger. Someone who likes to play near the edge of the box, who has his best times closer to the box compared to Tyler Dibling. Then let's also compare him to Iliman Ndiaye. How would we compare Ndiaye and Dibling? What are their differences? I think Ndiaye is, compared to George, is someone who is he bails Everton out in so many ways. He has such a multifaceted game to him. He has an immense dribbler. But he's also physically strong. He is versatile, so you can put him on the left or the right. He's extremely good at keeping the ball, drawing fouls. So he offers so many things in one package, which it makes him very, very viable for this Everton side. He's a also kind of unorthodox player, I would say. He has a very unique combination of skills, which Everton benefits from a lot. If we compare George to Ndiaye, I would say George is much more of a typical, or you could say archetypical, Premier League winger. What do I mean by that? He's someone who is pretty direct. I think he will have a good time on the side of production. So he has only like a couple of moves that he goes to regularly, takes up pretty similar positions. So he's either trying to cut inside and have a shot, or he will try to beat his man, pass him on the outside, or he will try to go for a 1-2. So the moves he makes, in my opinion, have a kind of repeatable pattern to them. He uses patterns you see in many other Premier League wingers. So the Premier League wingers I would compare George to, based on what I've seen so far, would be someone like Callum Hudson-Odoi, or on the right side, someone like Madueke. He's this type of Premier League winger, someone that you can kind of expect what you're going to get from him. Whereas Ndiaye is like a unpredictable player, right? He does something spectacular every game, something unique. He's comfortable playing against two men as well because he has so many tricks. But that's something I did not mention. I praise Ndiaye a lot, but I think Tyrique's advantage, being a kind of more typical winger, you have something reliable about him. It's something you can plan your offense around. He's the type of winger you see many Premier League teams have for a good reason, because it allows you to play a structured attacking game. You know that you can expect, with a good level of success, specific offensive contributions from Tyrique George. So he's, yes, compared to Ndiaye, has a different profile. And then let's compare him to another winger who we shouldn't forget we still have in the club, which is Dwight McNeil. He's a completely different profile from McNeil. Not only is he a right-footed winger on the left, whereas McNeil is on the left, but McNeil is someone who puts in a lot more crosses, who has a high work rate, and who is also, even though he has been given a lot of stick recently, he's a very productive winger, more or less. His scoring numbers for Everton overall are much better than other wingers have been in the past, and even I think, McNeil contributes in a productive way. But we would definitely say his game overall is more one-dimensional. He's much slower than Tyrique George, and what the main output you will get from him is quality crosses, or he's trying to do a 1-2 with someone inside and have a good shot on him. So definitely Tyrique has a unique profile. I think he has a typical profile of a Premier League winger, which is something, paradoxically, Everton haven't had for a very long time. I was going through the list. What type of wingers did we have in the last almost 10 years? And the only winger I would say that comes close to Tyrique George would be Demarai Gray. And we all know we had also several issues with Demarai Gray. He had the explosive pace, Tyrique has. He had the ability to beat his man. He also had a pretty good shot on him. But the level of consistency simply wasn't there, right? He could be extremely frustrating. Sometimes he will disappear from games completely. But before him, we had Dwight McNeil. Then we had someone like Alex Iwobi on the left, who was, again, a completely different type of winger. Someone who's almost more like a midfielder now, playing centrally, playing through balls, but maybe not the fastest, not the one able to take his man on one-on-one. And then even before Demarai Gray, we had Bernard, who, yes, tricky winger, but I don't know, never really felt like he was the long-term solution for Everton there. So I think we have, for the first time, like a typical Premier League winger that many other Premier League teams have. Right? I mentioned some names, Hudson-Odoi, Mitoma, think of Doku for Man City. Almost all Premier League teams seem to have a right-footed left winger who is direct, who can take on defenders, who can create problems from the wide area, penetrating the box from the side. This is, I think, what we will expect from Tyrique George. This is where he has his strong suits. And let's also look at his career numbers here. I think we can expect from him to be a rather productive winger. I think Tyrique George will be successful at Everton if he has pretty much in black and white he can provide goals and assists, which we have needed for years, and we will need him to contribute on that front. So maybe he won't offer the versatility as a winger that an Ndiaye offers. But in an ideal world, when he fulfills his potential, he can potentially be an even more productive winger than Iliman Ndiaye has been for Everton. Because although he has been pretty much certainly our best player the last 2 seasons, especially last season, his overall output in terms of goals and assists hasn't been that impressive, especially not from the left side. Great player, but we need more goals. We always need more goals, and I think definitely Tyrique George can be that player who also can contribute assists as well. Especially on the assist front, we haven't had much from Ndiaye. So Tyrique George has the potential to provide more assists, and his career numbers have shown that. And his performances so far in the Premier League hasn't been a great number, not a huge sample size. But if we look at this graphic here from Understat, which gives us an initial idea of his profile, shows us a pretty high number of expected assists per 90 minutes. Probably that number will go down on a bigger sample size, but it shows you he has the potential to create, which would be something Everton could really benefit from. Another point I wanted to make, how can we assess Tyrique George going forward? I think he, like Ndiaye, and that comes from what I've already said, he represents a transitional phase of Everton. It's a point I want to make about Tyrique George in particular. He represents, like I said, a more typical archetype of winger, which is something we did not have. So Everton needs to adjust as a whole team in order to bring out the strength of such a player, right? So we move from a Dwight McNeil winger to now someone like Tyrique George. And Everton as a whole needs to move into that direction as a team in order for that to be effective. So that we signed him, to me, represents a transition for Everton's attack as a whole. And if we look at the possession numbers from Everton last season compared to the season before, I think we can see that Everton is now is a team in transition overall, not just in terms of the names, but the way we like to play. In my last video, I said last season was more or less a failure, a season that did not feel like a step forward. And that is not only because we finished 13th, so the finish wasn't great, but also because we weren't able to integrate younger, talented players, put them in a position where we can realistically expect them to be mainstays of the team. But let me modify my statement to a degree. Last season was progress in the sense that we make progress about the balance of our game. What do I mean by that? In seasons before David Moyes, Everton, in order to be able to cope with the threat of relegation, especially under Sean Dyche, turned into a rather one-dimensional team. A team that has an extreme focus on being compact and able to defend, and design its attack in a rather straightforward, one-dimensional way. Meaning long balls towards Calvert-Lewin, attack through the wide spaces, lots of crosses, and trying to win second balls. We had players like Abdoulaye Doucouré there whose profile fitted that perfectly. Doucouré was good at handling second balls. Even if we go back, strikers like Richarlison, but then strikers like Calvert-Lewin and to a degree Beto, they are good in such an environment where you live off a very direct play, long balls, straight balls, second balls, a little bit of chaos. That was Everton's identity. And to a degree, it helped us become a team that is hard to beat. But the counterpart, the other side of the coin, was that we were a team that has pretty much no control over any game. Whenever we play, even if we play against teams that on paper we should be in a position to beat, every home game felt like a challenge. Because simply Everton weren't able to build up a structured game with the ball. Our attacks, the time in possession were always low. So we can see that in 25-26, the overall possession stat went up in a meaningful way. And I think that reflected how Everton played last season. We had a more balanced approach. We have definitely seen lots of passages where Everton are better creating an offensive game with the ball. And I expect that trend to continue. And I think someone like Tyrique George represents this new approach. Like a winger that, in order to flourish, needs to be fed several balls from midfield to the side, where he then is able to continuously put pressure on the defense from the side, instead of simply crossing the ball in or playing long balls. That will not be what Tyrique is good at, right? Like if we compare him to someone like Doucouré. So he represents that transition, which Everton as a whole, I think, will do well to go into that transition. Because yes, we were, in a way, we had an identity under Sean Dyche. We had a team that made sense, whereas sometimes we feel about this current team, it doesn't always make sense. But this one-dimensional identity we had always put a limit on what this Everton team can achieve. Too much of success would rely on a little bit of luck, on second balls falling our way, on chaos to go our way. And now I think we try to build an identity that has a more controlled, sustainable element as well, in terms of how we attack teams, especially at home, that we feel we can beat. So Tyrique represents that. And yeah, let's move on to what I think, in order for Tyrique George's career or the new season to be a success, what needs to change. Because we could argue, compared to Tyler Dibling, his last season with Everton has gone better, even though he didn't have many more minutes. But it feels like he's kind of a step ahead of Tyler Dibling right now, because he has been able to show us that he can have a positive impact on games, whereas we haven't really seen that from Dibling so far. And his first game against Dundee, also Tyrique was able to show he had his good moments, right? Especially in that first half, he was able to go cut inside, play some good 1-2s, has some touches in the box, and in one instance, in my opinion, he was able to win a penalty which then wasn't given. But definitely many positive moments overall. But what still needs to change, in my opinion, Everton as a whole, tactically, needs to be able to put these wingers into positions where they can be successful. Like I said, we shouldn't play like we play with McNeil. Our attack should not function like that. So where basically you offer no support, the overall team sits much deeper. Like I said, we need to find ways to provide the ball to George in more advanced areas. We can't give him the ball in areas where Dwight McNeil was pretty effective. And I think it's almost the same point that I made about the other side. Also, Tyrique George, as someone who likes to cut inside, who likes to make defenders have to take a decision, will also benefit from left back support, from a more offensive-minded left back. Be that Mykolenko being the more offensive Mykolenko, which we saw sometimes during his career. To be honest, that was not the majority of his career, but the Mykolenko we saw in the second half of 24-25 with Jake O'Brien on the right, where initially Mykolenko was able to play a more offensive version of the left back. Or there was a spell during Sean Dyche as well, where we saw Mykolenko being able to also provide some attacking support. I remember he scored in back-to-back games against Brighton and Crystal Palace. So either Mykolenko has to be the more offensive version of himself, or it can be Ademaznu or a new player. Ademaznu, very promising, like I said in my match review. Someone like that, an offensive-minded left back that offers an option on the side, again, tactically will benefit Tyrique George as it will benefit Tyler Dibling on the right. And overall, an Everton side that finds ways to feed balls to the left flank in a more offensive position, that will be key. So we need more footballing ability in the middle. I can definitely see James Garner be that type of player that feeds continuous small diagonal balls to someone like Tyrique George. I think that would be the tactical setup he needs in order to flourish. And then about himself, what does he need to do, in my opinion, in order to give us fans some excitement, give us hope that he can be our main option on the wing going forward? I think he needs to, in a way, score. He needs to start finding ways to end up on the score sheet. So we very much black and white. We just need to see him start to find the back of the net or find some assists, because he has been in promising positions and the moves have also been pretty good, but so far he hasn't been able to be productive in a black and white manner. And something I will say, I think he has to pay a little bit of attention to not become a player that is too cute, right? What do I mean by that? He often does these little hesitation moves, and I would like to see him play sometimes with a little bit more determination. Be straightforward, decide on what you're going to do, and just see it through with absolute conviction. I don't want to see too many of these hesitation moves which then just end up with him passing the ball back. Be direct, be decisive in your actions, and yeah, don't become a player that looks cute and nice and technical but does not really move the needle when it comes to his actual output. Something we should also keep an eye on is a potential partnership with Dewsbury Hall. I think that was also very apparent that these two seem to be friends, and they also try to develop a friendship on the pitch. So he was constantly looking for Dewsbury Hall, playing 1-2s. This could potentially be another exciting combo that we could look forward to, because we don't really have such combos. We had one that I mentioned before, Alcaraz and Beto, but for whatever reason Alcaraz didn't really play any factor moving forward. So seeing the partnerships like George and Dewsbury Hall, I think that would be something Everton fans would be very happy about, right? Remember the good old times when we had someone like Pienaar and Baines. What a legendary partnership that was for at least my generation of Everton fans. Overall, Tyrique, I think this preseason is important. Try to establish yourself as a pro, as someone who has a legitimate claim to play at least double the minutes that you have played so far. I think you've had 11 games last season. I think you should be a player that in this season should pretty much play every game, either as a starter or someone that comes from the bench, unless for whatever reason we need to tactically see out a game and do more defensive subs. But you should be in a position where you become a mainstay of this Everton team. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Tyrique George. Will be exciting to see how Moyes lines up when Ndiaye comes back. Currently, I would think Tyrique is slightly ahead of Dibling, so we would see Tyrique on the left and Ndiaye on the right, but probably not going to happen this weekend. So hopefully we see George and Dibling again, and yeah, going to be exciting. Hopefully he can get his first goal against Bolton. Let me know what you think about Tyrique George, about his what his profile is like, what he has to do, what Everton has to do in order to accommodate him, what he has to do himself, and how you see his career unfold in an Everton shirt. Looking forward to match review on the weekend, and yeah, thank you very much. Adios.